best-selling author of Obamaland, I have seen the future and it doesn't work. Journalist Mr. Delingpole with us. His website is jamesdelingpole.com, and he's with us for the rest of the hour. Now, if you just joined us, we're going to chronicle the aftermath of ClimateGate. And it's kind of like a battle at sea where you torpedo a big ship and it starts exploding and burning, but then the magazine where all of its explosives and artillery shells are stored ignites, and the whole ship just blows up. Now, they're still in our local towns and cities. They've invested hundreds of billions. They're not going to stop. But their capital ship, their main flagship, has completely exploded. They are now known as frauds. But they don't care. They're going to continue on. So we're going through the UN climate chief, who is admitting, all these errors in their reports. But it's coming out that they, quote, did want to make it look worse so that we would accept them saving us. And, of course, he makes money off shutting down ancient, and when I say ancient, some of the oldest and best steel mills, forges in England, and the government pays him to then set one up in India. So this is also a hijacking of industry. We're covering that scandal first. Then we're going to get into all the other scandals with Mr. Delingpole. Please continue, sir.
Yeah, we've got Dr. Pachauri, who is the bearded troll impersonator we talked about earlier. And this guy is in charge of the UN body responsible for telling the world that the world is getting dangerously hotter. It's all man's fault. We must spend lots and lots of money. We must increase regulation. We must have carbon credits, carbon controls. And lo and behold, what is this guy doing? He happens to have involvement in the carbon trading industry. This carbon trading industry, which was invented, of course, by Ken Lay of Enron. This guy has got connections with the Chicago Carbon Exchange, which, of course, is whose shareholders include Goldman Sachs and Al Gore. So, you know, the net broadens. There are a lot of very rich people and organizations who are involved in this massive scam. And so Pachauri Gate, as we call it, is this guy being exposed as being compromised, let us say. Then after Pachauri Gate, we get this thing called Glacier Gate. It turns out that the United Nations, the IPCC's fourth assessment report, you know, supposed to be the most accurate, up-to-date, most scientifically reliable report on the state of the planet, climate-wise, tells us that the world's glaciers could be gone by 2035. Now, 2035 is not very far away, is it? So that's kind of quite a scary prospect. Could it be that man's evil work has been melting our glaciers so quickly they're going to be gone by 2035? Well, guess what? No, it isn't true at all. It turns out that this report got its figures wrong. The actual figure it should have quoted was 2350. That's a difference of I don't know. You do the math, but it's over 200 years, isn't it? How did the IPCC, which is supposed to be the work of what is it, 2,000 expert scientists in their field, 2,500 peer-reviewed scientists, we're told, how come this mistake got slipped into this reliable report? Well, it turns out that the IPCC plays pretty fast and loose with its scientific fact. It got this from a magazine article in New Scientist. Where did New Scientist get this information from about the glaciers melting by 2035? It got this information from a conversation on a mobile phone with an Indian chap who has since admitted that he made a terrible mistake. Now, funny, isn't it, that the IPCC never bothered to check up on this mistake? You know, this is the reliable, they keep using this word robust. The IPCC peer-reviewed process is robust. Well, I'm sorry, but this is anything but robust. This is climate fraud.
Now, James Delingpole, investigating this for major publications in England and the United States, we know that when they have this mantra of, but it's peer-reviewed, it's peer-reviewed, ignore ClimateGate, and that one of the main climate facilities used by the UN at East Anglia, England, ignore the fact that they are trying to hide decline. We have all these other scientists, all peer-reviewed, but when you look at it, they are all using the data collated at that university and 3 or 4 others who are all in the emails lying together. And then we go and look at the temperature measurements with NASA and with New Zealand and with everybody. It's all fraud. It's all lies. And their peer-reviewed journals are somebody on a cell phone. I mean, you know, you could just call into the UN and say, Martians are going to land if we don't put taxes on gasoline. Oh, that's it. Peer-reviewed. Put it in there.
Yep. That's absolutely right. I think whenever you hear somebody use the phrase peer-reviewed, you should reach for your Browning. Because peer-reviewed, I'm sorry to say, is a bankrupt notion since ClimateGate, because what the ClimateGate emails from the University of East Anglia showed quite clearly was that the scientists at the heart of this process are shutting out of the peer review process any scientists who disagree with them. So it's not a question of the pursuit of scientific truth. It's not to do with the open sharing of information and the replacement of one hypothesis by another hypothesis, which is the way that traditionally science has advanced through the ages. Otherwise, we'd be still thinking the world was flat.
But in the new science, you're not allowed to question Al Gore. He says it's settled. That's the end of it. And but isn't it worse, sir? Because they're not just only allowing a small inner group to produce these fake studies that have been proven to all be absolute fraud. They will never release the data. And now, because the data is being forced to be released, we find out when you actually go to Russia or go to China or go to the United States or go to South America that the numbers they use from the temperature measurements are absolute frauds every time you spot check. I mean, this needs to be fully audited. But again, the UN and all the major governments are behind this. So how do you let the crooks audit themselves?
Well, I know. I mean, Alex, have you seen the fantastic report released today by Joseph DeLeo, who's a meteorologist, and Anthony Watts of the famous What's Up With That website? It's fantastic. It says, surface temperature records, policy-driven deception. And what it argues, this very thorough report, is that the surface data records from the last century or so are so corrupt and unreliable that we cannot even be sure that any global warming whatsoever has taken place in the last century or so.
And they've got a lot of tricks, too. They will, all over the world, and this is on record now, we posted the mainstream articles where they admit it, in the last 20 years, these funded groups have set up their own reading systems, or they have contracted with airports, or they've contracted with weather centers on top of buildings, where they know the temperature is going to be many degrees hotter, and that's right. Another way.
It's called the urban heat island effect. And what this means is that the weather sites, you know, where temperatures have been measured around the world, originally they were built maybe on the edge of town, and as civilization, as cities have grown in size, so the area surrounding the weather gauge has become, you know, more and more built up. Some of these things are sited near airports. So what this means is that inevitably the temperature records they're keeping have been distorted by the urban heat island effect of the cities, because cities are warmer than the country outside. That's how it works. So how are we to trust these records which show that the Earth is getting warmer, when it may simply be the result of the urban heat island effect? But that's not all. What happened in the sometime between the 1970s and the 1990s is that they vastly reduced the number of weather stations used to compile the world temperature data records. And what they generally did, these organizations like NASA and the Climatic Research Unit, was that they cherry-picked the temperature data sites that suited their cause, i.e. they ignored the ones at higher latitude latitudes and higher altitudes, and they concentrated on the ones which would show that the world was getting warmer, and then kind of took an average. Now, inevitably, what happened is that you saw this upward tick in the graph, which is exactly what they want, because an upward tick in the graph shows that the world is getting warmer, it must be man-made, and action must be taken.
But the Russians and others came out and exposed that, and then they've now been forced to admit that they did indeed do that. They would just take the warmer southern areas and create an average for the entire country for the frozen north as well. The frozen northern areas of Russia, Siberia and many other areas, of course they're a lot colder than southern Russia. I mean, this is bona fide fraud, and what ClimateGate proves is they're all coordinating with each other to engage in fraud.